Howdy everyone, and for this final lesson on District 9, we're going to be looking at how it was produced. Okay, now for the starter activity, I want you to explain to me what you think the difference is between a production company and a distribution company. Pause the video for that. Alright, so as the name suggests, the production company are the people that make the film, and the distribution company are the ones that fund the film being put into cinemas and selling the Blu-rays, etc. So the production company puts the money up for making it, like the props, the actors, etc. And then the distribution company puts the money up for putting it into cinemas, etc. Okay, so these are a list of production companies currently in circulation right now. So you've got Marvel, obviously make the Marvel films. We've got Heyday Films, who make the Harry Potter films. You've got Syncope, who make all the Christopher Nolan films. And you've got DreamWorks, who make the animation films. And you've got Amblin, who make all the Spielberg films. Lucasfilm make all the Star Wars films. And 20th Century Fox, well, that one's been bought by Marvel now. Okay, so these are production companies. They create the film. Whereas distribution companies, okay, these are the ones you tend to see more often in the opening credits, okay? These are the ones that put the films into cinemas, and these are the ones that spend the money on selling the Blu-rays, etc. Now, the reason these get put first on the credits is because these are the ones that have made sure that people got to see these films, okay? Some famous ones here, so we have Walt Disney, obviously. Walt Disney Pictures putting films into cinemas for 70 odd years now. You got the Weinstein Company. That's a bit of a controversial one now because of the person who ran the company is a convicted sex offender, and now he's also got coronavirus. So I suppose there's some comeuppance in that. You got Warner Brothers, who make all of the Batman films, and Sony, and we'll get to Sony in a minute actually. Okay, so bit of a quiz then, Which company produced Spider-Man Far From Home? Okay, so it was Columbia. So Columbia Pictures produced the film, okay? It wasn't Marvel, it wasn't Disney, it wasn't Sony, it was Columbia, okay? Now, which film distributed the film? Which company put the film into cinemas? All right, so it was Sony. Sony owned the rights to Spider-Man. So they're the only people who can make a film with him without having to ask anyone else's permission. Okay, so Sony distributed the film, and you might notice that on Columbia, when you see it pop up, it does say a Sony company. So some of these distribution companies do own production companies as well, just like Disney Studios owns Marvel, etc. Okay. Now then, so let's see how District 9 got made. So make notes as I go through it. Let's see how District 9 got made. So Peter Jackson, really famous for writing and directing the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy. Okay, so he originally was going to make a Halo film. Okay, and he had Neil Blomkamp as the person to direct it. Now that film didn't work out, so he said, here is $50 million, or I think around that amount. Here's $50 million. Go make the film that you want to make. He said he can literally make whatever he wanted to because he was disappointed about not being able to make the Halo film. Okay, so Peter Jackson, his company, gave Blomkamp the money. All right, so the first thing I want you to do before we look at the next part of the production process is watch the original short film that Blomkamp made. Okay, so it's called Alive in Joburg. I'll put it in the notes at the bottom. Go watch it and see how you can kind of see the remnants of this film in District 9. They are very, very similar. Okay, go watch that. And I want you to answer these questions then. How does it compare to District 9, and why might they have these differences? Okay, so pause the video, go watch the Alive in Joburg and answer those questions. 3, 2, 1. Okay then, so there are going to be lots of similarities between the alien's design and the characters and the style of documentary, but you also might notice that the expense is very different. Neil Blomkamp was making this on a very small shoestring budget, whereas he has several $1 million to play with for District 9, so there are massive differences as well. Okay, so let's have a look at the next part of the production then. Filming. The film was shot on location in Soweto, South Africa, during a time of violent unrest in Alexandria, Gauteng, and other South African townships. Those are the little slum type areas, like the favelas, involving clashes between native South Africans and Africans born in other countries. So it was actually filmed on location, okay, where the film is set. Okay, the location that portrays District 9 in itself was in fact a real impoverished neighbourhood from which people were being forcibly relocated into temporary housing. Okay, so it really hit home how honest this film was when representing what actually happened to people who lived in these places. The government were moving them, not the aliens, the actual people that lived in this real location it was filmed in, to different housing. Okay, more filming points then. The film took a total of 60 days shooting. Filming in December raised another issue in that there was a lot more rain. Due to the rain, there was a lot of greenery to work with, which Blomkamp didn't want. He wanted it to look gritty and lacking nature and vegetation. So he had to cut back some of the vegetation, so he made it look worse in order to fit the style that he wanted to. Because of the amount of handheld shooting required for the film, the producers and crew decided to shoot on the Digital Red 1 4K camera. So you'll notice it's not filmed with film; it's filmed on digital. So there are a lot of arguments about that, but the 4K camera does allow for much better Blu-ray releases later on. Okay, so the Red camera is quite a famous camera now, camera company now, making digital film. Additionally, the post-production team, so after it's filmed, was warned that the most Red camera footage they could handle a day was about an hour and a half. When that got to 5 hours a day, reinforcements are called in, and 120 terabytes of data were filled, which is the equivalent of 24 million songs. So, because of the size of these files being 4K, you might notice this on your phones as well. When you're filming in 4K, the files are massive, and they had this issue, particularly 2007, 2008 when this was filmed. They just didn't have the storage for it. Okay, in 2007, 2008, the size of 128 terabytes would have been massive. We're talking perhaps the size of a wardrobe size of data. Okay, props then. So the film features many weapons and vehicles produced by the South African arms industry, including the R5, the Vector CR21, Rattle Infantry fighting vehicle, the Ruby-Cat armoured fighting vehicle, Atlas Oryx helicopter, militarised Toyota Hilux technical pickup truck. So what's interesting here is that they've chosen real South African properties, not properties, but equipment. Okay, now. So my task for you is what might the benefit of using locally sourced military items be? Okay, so pause the video and think to yourself, why do you reckon they chose um, weapons and equipment that were based locally? Pause the video. Okay, so what I'm hoping you guys came up with there is that it might have been a little bit cheaper. It might have helped the local economy. It might have looked more realistic. It might have shown people that they respected the culture, and also it probably just made things easier. Now, we're already at the plenary because there's not really a lot to go through here. I've talked through, giving you a whistle-stop tour of how the film was made and the sorts of things they did. So all I want you to do is just create a summary of how has the history and culture of South Africa influenced the making of District 9. Okay, so consider yourselves apartheid, so the segregation of black people and white people. How did that impact the film? The filming locations and methods and how they filmed those. Think about the vegetation and the fact that they filmed in winter. Think about the type of camera they used and how much footage they had to film, and also the military equipment used. I wanted to create a summary of the entire production process. So how does all of this fit into making District 9? Okay, so don't forget to talk about apartheid though, because that's an essential part of the history and culture that influenced Blomkamp when he was making this film. So I'm hoping you guys spend roughly 15-20 minutes doing this. So summarise what aspects of the history and culture of South Africa influenced the making of District 9. That is your final activity. for this and also the whole of District 9. Okay, thank you guys. See you in the next one.